A sea of protesters in Tel Aviv this weekend demanding new elections and calling for a deal to release hostages 6 months after the terror attack on October 7th. I'm joined now by White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby. Good to see you, Admiral Kirby. And let's start with that interview with Jose Andres. Yeah. He says this is a war against humanity and things have to change now.
Well, our hearts continue to go out with Chef Andres and his whole team at World Central Kitchen. As you know, the president spoke to him. The president shares that grief and sorrow. And as we have made clear, there's going to have to be some changes to the way the Israeli Defense Forces are prosecuting these operations in Gaza to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And some of the changes we talked about, certainly more humanitarian aid and assistance getting in, but just as critically, Martha, there's got to be changes in the deconfliction process, the information flow between aid workers on the ground and the IDF in their headquarters so that this kind of targeting can't happen again.
Are you satisfied with the investigation? He clearly wants to see more done. Would you like to see a further investigation?
We're looking at the investigation right now, Martha. We haven't come to any conclusions one way or another. This was an investigation that was done sort of akin to like an inspector general. So it was outside the chain of command. But again, we're working our way through that.
Andres said he questioned the Israeli claim that the drones could not see the logo on top of the car. Is he right to question that?
I don't know. We haven't also seen, as far as I know, haven't seen any of the specific video evidence. So it's hard to know what their sight picture was at night. Now, certainly, operations at night can be more difficult. There's technology, though, that can allow you to burn through the darkness to see better.
In drones, right?
On drones and infrared technology. But I just don't know what I don't know what they were using in terms of their technology to look at this. But clearly, and they've admitted that they obviously made a mistake here. What really matters is that they take steps going forward to make sure it can't happen again and that they're transparent about those steps.
And I just want to talk about rules of engagement. The Israeli military says it's a grave mistake, but that drone operator spotted who they said he thought it was a gunman get into one of those cars. And yet, even if it wasn't an aid convoy, they destroyed 3 cars. Is that legitimate rules of engagement?
I think, again, we're going to have to work our way through this investigation and the decision-making process that goes in not just 1, but then 3 strikes and what the intelligence was telling them, at least what they believed it was. We know from our own experience that the intelligence you get and you process and you analyze may not always be accurate, and you act on that intelligence. So, again, we just have to learn a little bit more about this investigation to see. But as I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but what really matters is they make the deconfliction changes and the communication changes so that this doesn't happen again. I mean, we've already seen, and Chef Andres is concerned, of course, about operating on the ground. Other aid organizations are probably making these difficult decisions, and we got to make sure that they feel safe and secure getting into Gaza and distributing that aid.
You said the U.S. position towards Israel could change if there is not a dramatic increase in humanitarian aid and a reduction of the violence against civilians. What will the consequences be if they don't do that?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of the president or close down his decision space, but as you heard us say, and Secretary Blinken as well.
What does that mean, decision space?
We need to see change over time. So these announcements, Martha, they're very welcome and they're good. And they are some of the things that the president asked specifically for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do in terms of opening up additional crossings, allowing more trucks in, getting the deconfliction process in place. But now we have to judge it over time. We have to see, not past the announcements, and see if they actually meet these commitments over time in a sustained and verifiable way so that confidence can be restored, not just between aid workers and the IDF, but between the people of Gaza and Israel.
Would you rule out slowing down or pausing weapons transfers if this does not happen?
It's not my place to rule anything in or out today. What I can tell you is that, as the president made clear to Prime Minister Netanyahu, we got to see some changes in the way they're prosecuting these operations, or we're going to have to think about making changes in our own policy towards Gaza.
Okay,
Israel has a right to defend itself. And I think it's important to also remember, they live in a tough neighborhood. We're all focused on the fight in Gaza, as we rightly should be. But they're facing threats from Iran and from Iran-backed groups all throughout the region, and we got to make sure that they're ready for that.
Quite a threat right now. But I want to show you a timeline, Admiral Kirby. and wonder why things might change this time. November 6th, death toll in Gaza passes 10,000. November 10th, Secretary Blinken, far too many Palestinians have been killed. December 12th, Biden says Israel is losing support to indiscriminate bombing. December 22nd, death toll in Gaza passes 20,000. February 8th, President Biden calls the response in Gaza over the top. February 29th, death toll in Gaza passes 30,000. March 2nd, Vice President Harris said there must be an immediate ceasefire for at least the next 6 weeks. April 1st, IDF strike kills 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers. So why do you think anything will change?
I'm glad you brought that timeline up because it shows the growing degree of frustration that we've had with the way these operations are being prosecuted and the way that the Israelis are acting on the ground in terms of civilian casualties. So we have been increasingly frustrated. And again, that was a core message that the president delivered to Prime Minister Netanyahu in their phone call this past week, that if they've got to do more, they've got to make changes. Now, the prime minister assured the president that he would do that. We've seen some announcements in those early hours. That's welcome. We got to see more. We've got to see it over time.
And the Israeli media is reporting this morning that the IDF withdrew ground troops from southern Gaza. They've been fighting there in Khan Yunis for 4 months. What does that tell you?
Well, it doesn't. It's hard to know exactly what that tells us right now. This was just an announcement that they made. I'd certainly let them speak to their operations as we understand it and through their public announcements. It is really just about rest and refit for these troops that have been on the ground for 4 months and not necessarily, that we can tell, indicative of some coming new operation for these troops. They've been on the ground for 4 months. The word we're getting is they're tired. They need to be refit.
And just one final question. There's such a dramatic disagreement between what the Israelis say and what they say in Gaza about what is happening on the ground. Obviously, we've seen some video of that. Why hasn't the U.S. insisted on more on-the-ground accountability? Why aren't we, and I'm not saying in a combat position, on the ground accounting for this ourselves to make sure the rules of law are followed?
The president's been very clear. We're not going to have U.S. boots on the ground in Gaza fighting in that war or involved in that conflict. What we will do is make sure that they have the tools and capabilities they need to defend themselves. And what we will also do, and the president made this clear, is hold Israel accountable for the way in which they're conducting these operations. You heard it from Chef Andres, and he's not wrong. You can do both. You can be a good friend of Israel, as we are, and helping them defend themselves, at the same time holding them to an appropriate standard of accountability and effectiveness from a military perspective where they are protecting civilians.
Okay, thanks so much for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.